Series gift. There have been battles of October, but this one was war, and shots were fired early.
In the air to center, Devon White racing back at the wall, can't get it. Well hit down the right field line toward the pole. It is a home run.
Now it was the Blue Jays' turn, a time for the world champions to prove that they are world class. They did their explaining like this. It was one of those nights. Time to tell your friends that something special is happening.
Well hit down the right field line. Carter drifting toward the pole. Home run.
All night, people watched the scoreboard change. All night, the pressure was on. All night, they played their guts out. And then around midnight, the baseball gods visited again.
Base hit. Olerud scores. Molitor is stopped at third. Line to center. Dykstra can't get it. Little looper, long run for Dykstra in right center, can't get it.
It was one of those nights. Is there somebody, somewhere, who can give us another? If you were looking for any adrenaline in the city of brotherly love last night, you're plumb out of luck. And so, by the way, with the Phillies, after being up 5 runs, then losing by 1, Curt Schilling plans to change that one tonight. And maybe all this rain and drizzle is a metaphor for what this city is going through these days as they try to win at least one World Series game at home and stay alive. If not, those hard-charging, unbelievable Toronto Blue Jays will fly north out of the rain and celebrate another world championship. What's it gonna be, folks, as we have Game 5, the Toronto Blue Jays and the Philadelphia Phillies live here on CBS. Hi again, everybody. I'm Pat O'Brien, and welcome once again to CBS Sports coverage of the 1993 World Series. Pardon us if we seem just a little bit out of breath. We're still trying to get over last night's World Series game of the century. Besides 29 runs, a game that had everything, and when it was over, people sort of looked in the mirror and said, what have we done?
I'm not going to go home and sit up tonight and worry about the fact that I didn't get them out. I didn't get them out. It's happened to me before. This just happens to be the World Series, and there's going to be a microscope on everything I do, so I don't have any excuses.
I've never seen a game like this at this level, and when you talk about the significance of it being a series game, it's just, you know, it kind of adds to the uniqueness and the specialness.
I'll have to watch this one on TV to figure out exactly what happened, but talking about tough losses tonight, it's a tough loss.
I'll look back at this game and say, hey, I played in one of the most exciting ball games. It may have been a little ugly as far as the walks, as far as you know, the base on balls and all the hits. But I tell you what, it was a very good game to sit back and watch and to play in.
Indeed. We must be doing something right because it's been raining all afternoon and evening, and the rain has just let up. We plan to get this one in. Maybe a little light rain later on, but they'll get this one in. Might be a little chilly tonight. We'd love to also promise you another game last night, but this network does have standards and practices, and we can't promise that one. But the way things go around here, fasten your seatbelts anyway. You never know what's going to happen. Sean McDonough and Tim McCarver will have the play-by-play when we come back as we are ready for Game 5 of the World Series. The Blue Jays, the Phillies. Enjoy yourselves, everybody.
Regardless of the outcome tonight, this will be the final baseball game of 1993 at the Vet in Philadelphia.
It's Game 5 of the World Series between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Philadelphia Phillies. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Sean McDonough along with Tim McCarver, and it's great to have you with us. The Toronto Blue Jays lead this best-of-7 series 3-1. With a win tonight, Toronto will have defended its World Championship. The Phillies need a win tonight to send the series back to Toronto for Game 6. And, Tim, it is certainly an uphill climb facing the Phillies. They have to overcome last night's heartbreaking loss, and they also have to overcome history. This is the 37th time in World Series play in a best-of-7 format that one team has trailed 3-1, and the team trailing has only come back to win the series 5 times.
But it hit as history shows. As a matter of fact, in 1925, the Pittsburgh Pirates beat the Washington Senators after trailing 3-1. The Yankees did it to the Braves in 1958, the Tigers to the Cardinals in 68. Pittsburgh did it to the Orioles in 1979, and Kansas City, the last team to be behind 3-1 and come back and win 3 in a row. I'm not too sure that it's as important that the Phillies are down 3-1, but how they got down. With Toronto coming back with 5 runs in the 8th inning last night, that is the latest that a team has come back from a 5-run deficit to win a World Series game in the history of World Series play.
And in the ongoing saga of Paul Molitor, he is in the lineup again tonight at third base. The pitchers for Game 5, a rematch of Game 1. Juan Guzman for Toronto, Curt Schilling for Philadelphia. The first pitch from the vet right after this.
CBS Sports coverage of Game 5 of the 1993 World Series is brought to you by Budweiser Beechwood Aged for a crisp, clean, classic taste. Lexus Luxury Automobiles. The ingenious products from Magnavox. They're smart, very smart. And by your Allstate agent. You're in good hands with Allstate.
There are some is using the same starting lineup as last night with the exception of the pitcher. Rickey Henderson leads off in left field. Batting second in center field, Devon White. Roberto Alomar is the second baseman hitting third. The cleanup hitter, right fielder Joe Carter. John Olerud is at first base. Paul Molitor, the third baseman, hits sixth. Batting seventh, the shortstop, Tony Fernandez. Pat Borders is the catcher hitting eighth, and Juan Guzman is on the mound. And let's check in with Jim Gray.
All right, Sean, the mood in the Phillies clubhouse before the game was upbeat and positive. There was no moping and the music was blasting. I spoke with several of the Phillies and they seem to have put last night behind them. They also said that they feel that they need Curt Schilling to pitch 8 or 9 strong innings. If not, they won't be successful. One guy's real optimistic, Jim Fregosi. He told us that his bags are packed and he's going to Toronto. He just hopes his friends are going with him. Sean?
Thank you, Jim. Curt Schilling, the losing pitcher in Game 1 when he went head-to-head with Guzman. His first pitch of Game 5, a breaking ball for ball 1 to Rickey Henderson. After a slow start in the first 2 games, Henderson has picked it up in the 2 games here in Philadelphia. Raised his average to .333 for the World Series. And he's up there now with a count of 1 ball and 1 strike.
Rickey has also led off each game by being on base. He has singled, doubled, and he's walked twice.
On the ground to second, the Mariano Duncan with John Kruk for the out.
The defense for the Phillies, Milt Thompson, the left fielder, he had a terrific night last night, and so did Lenny Dykstra. Jim Eisenreich in right, Dave Hollins at third base, Kevin Stocker at short, Mariano Duncan at second base, John Kruk at first, and Darren Daulton behind the plate.
And at the plate, Devon White, who's hitting .412 in the World Series, 7 for 17. And he had the game-winning hit in last night's game. Down the left field line and foul. It sliced into the stands. The umpires, Tim McClelland of the American League, working his first World Series, is behind the plate. Dana DeMuth at first, Dave Phillips at second, Paul Runge at third. Mark Johnson in left, and Charlie Williams is along the right field line. Taking all the way is White. 1-1 the count. Curt Schilling, the most valuable player in this year's National League Championship Series, although he did not post a win against the Atlanta Braves. He pitched well in his 2 starts.
and a strike. Schilling thought he was over-prepared for his Game 1 start against the Blue Jays. Watched hours of videotape. Said he had too many thoughts about the individual Blue Jay hitters going through his mind when they came to the plate.
That's usually what happens in postseason play. You do have a tendency to over-prepare. A good formula that I heard 30 years ago: as the media builds it up, you play it down.
3-2 pitch. Golfed out of play by White. Schilling says tonight he's going to worry less about the weaknesses of the Blue Jay hitters and go back to his pitching strengths. Another 3-2 pitch. And another foul ball in left. And no chance for Hollins, Stocker, or Thompson. Coming into tonight's game, the Toronto Blue Jays have hit .340 as a team. That's the highest team batting average in a World Series. And the Phillies are at .307 through the first 4 games. That's the 9th highest team batting average in a World Series. White to center, and Dykstra has room. Two down and no score in the top of the first.
I think what's going through the Phillies players' minds now is that Curt Schilling has to pitch a good ball game so we can get the confidence back of scoring runs and keeping a lead. And when you get blown out and a team comes back from a 14-9 deficit in the 8th inning, you really lose confidence in your pitching staff, and a good performance by Schilling will erase those doubts.
Roberto Alomar up there with a count of 2-0. He's 8 for 18 in the World Series and has stolen 4 bases. Blue Jays have scored 3 runs in the first inning in each of the first 2 games of this series played here at the Vet. The last 2 ball games. Of course, last night after they scored the 3 in the first, the Phillies answered with 4 in the bottom of the inning to set the tone for the night. 3 balls and a strike. And ball 4, just a little bit up and away. So Alomar is the first base runner of the night with 2 outs in the first.
The Blue Jays are not only a first ball hitting team, but also when they get on base, they like to steal on the first pitch. Their thinking is if they can steal on the first pitch, well, that gets things out of the way so the hitter can hit. Don't want your hitter, especially if he's a cleanup hitter, to be taking too many pitches to allow you to run. That's why they run on the first pitch.
Kruk holds Alomar at first. Out at the plate, 1 strike on Carter. Alomar 4 stolen bases, and he's only been thrown out once. The combination of Schilling and Dalton was tough to run on during the regular season. Dalton threw out 10 of 19 trying to steal when Schilling was on the mound. Popped out of play to the right, 0-2 on Carter. Roberto Alomar has 18 postseason steals in his career, and he's only been thrown out once. That was the ill-advised stolen base attempt at third in Game 2. Breaking ball just missed. One and 2 on Carter, who had 3 hits last night, including the double with 1 out that started the 6-run 8th. He scored the first of the 6 runs. Schilling missed inside. Hurts 26 years old. He'll turn 27 in November. 6'4", 215 pounds. The 2-2 is outside. And the count is full, and with 2 outs, Alomar will be running with the pitch.
There are a lot of managers, and I'm sure Cito Gaston could be one, that believe that you should run with a count 2-2 and 2 outs. I've never believed that that's a good running situation, because if the pitcher misses with that pitch, it's 3-2, and it compels the runner to run with 3-2, 2 outs.
Alomar goes. Carter to center field. Dykstra. And that ends the inning. After a half inning of Game 5, the Blue Jays nothing, and the Phillies coming up. Using the same lineup as last night, with the exception of the pitcher. Lenny Dykstra leading off in center field. Mariano Duncan at second base. John Kruk at first. The cleanup hitter is the third baseman Dave Hollins. Darren Dalton behind the plate hitting 5th. Jim Eisenreich at right field bats 6th. Milt Thompson, the left fielder, hitting 7th. Kevin Stocker at short bats 8th, and the pitcher Schilling hits 9th.
The defense for the Blue Jays: Ricky Henderson in left field, Devon White in center, and Joe Carter in right. Paul Molitor once again at third base. Tony Fernandez at shortstop. Roberto Alomar at second. John Olerud at first base. Pat Borders behind the plate. And Juan Guzman. He has perhaps the best stuff in the American League. His problem has been wildness. He set an all-time American League record with 26 wild pitches while walking 110. He also led the majors with 29 leadoff walks. But if he's in the strike zone, he's as tough as anybody.
Greeted by Lenny Dykstra, coming off a big night last night. Lifted his average for the World Series to .389. Guzman's first pitch is a fastball at the knees for strike 1. Dykstra reached base his first 4 times up last night and scored on each of those 4 occasions. He had 2 two-run homers, had a double, and walked and stole a base. Drove in 4 and scored 4, but in the 8th, with his team down by a run, Wayne Ward got him looking for a big strikeout to end the 8th. But when you get 14 runs, ordinarily, you expect that's enough. Jim Fregosi joked that ground crew here had to replace home plate, that it was worn out, all the action it saw last night.
The last time during the regular season that 14 runs was scored by 2 teams was 1990, when Montreal beat Atlanta 16-14. Since that time, 7,500 games have been played.
And as the result of a scoring change from last night, it was even a more prolific offensive battle between these 2 teams. You might remember that Paul Molitor in the 8th inning hit a bounding ball that eluded the grasp of Dave Hollins down the line. Originally, it was scored an error on Hollins. We commented at the time that it was a very tough error to give Hollins. And just before the game tonight, the official scores announced that they had changed it to a double, making all of the runs in the game earned, adding another hit, which meant that the 2 teams last night tied another World Series record with 32 hits in the game. The 8th player in history to score 4 in a game, and the first Philly to hit 2 home runs in a World Series game. Lenny Dykstra up there with a full count.
Really unusual that Lenny has a 3-2 count on him, huh? Seems like every at bat he ends up with a count 3-2.
Ball 4. Well, the Phillies' game plan, and it was successful in game 1 against Guzman, was to be patient, make him throw strikes. And Guzman wound up having to leave the ball game after 5 innings because he had thrown 120 pitches. Guzman said he's going to change tonight. He knows that the Phillies will be taking early in the count, so he's going to try to throw strikes earlier in the count. Mariano Duncan, another one of the hitting stars in this series, and that is redundant. Dykstra has 2 stolen bases without being caught over the first 4 games.
Yeah, both teams with all the hitting that has been done by all of the players, both teams with averages over 300. Mariano Duncan leads both teams in hits with 9.
One strike on Duncan. Out in the Philadelphia bullpen, Danny Jackson is warming up. Jim Fregosi told us before the game tonight that Terry Mulholland will be available for use in tonight's game out of the bullpen. With the bullpen as beleaguered as it is, they need to be reinforced, and Mulholland will provide that tonight if necessary. And that means if Mulholland pitches tonight, Jackson would move up and start game 6, which would be Saturday in Toronto. And he originally slated to start game 7. He'd pitch on 3 days rest in game 6, and Mulholland would go back for game 7. Larry Boa, the third base coach.
Not unlikely that Mulholland could be the closer tonight with the problems Mitch Williams has had.
Although you could give him just about any Philadelphia pitcher's role, because they have all struggled in this World Series. Of course, the one guy who has pitched pretty well out of the bullpen is Roger Mason. But he worked 2 2/3 innings last night, and Jim Fregosi wasn't sure before the game tonight if he'd be able to work in this ball game. No score. We're in the bottom of the first. The Phillies have the lead man on, and Duncan is up there with a count of 1-1. And the fans grow restless as Guzman throws to first again.
Maury Wills used to say that if you're not diving back to first base, you're not off far enough. The only base runner that I ever saw that was a terrific base runner and a fast base runner who didn't dive into first base going back was Lou Brock. He almost always went back standing up.
Looked like Guzman tried to put a little extra on that delivery. 2 balls and 1 strike. Cito Gaston and the Blue Jays trying to become the first team to win back-to-back world championships since the Yankees of 77 and 78. Dykstra runs. Duncan is swinging a miss, and the throw goes into center field. Dykstra on his feet and on his way to third. It's a stolen base for Dykstra, and an error on Borders, allowing Dykstra to take third.
Borders has a good pitch to handle, but the throw tails into the runner, and Alomar had no chance whatsoever to even touch the ball. Over the runner, and the runner, Lenny Dykstra, getting down, and because the ball was into him, Alomar had no chance, and Dykstra goes to third on the throwing error by Borders.
A runner at third with nobody out, in the count of 2-2 on Mariano Duncan. Popped up in shallow right center. Dykstra is tagging as Carter makes the catch, and Dykstra came about 10 feet down the line and stopped the high throw handled by a leaping Borders.
I think the reason Dykstra was tagging then was in the event that Alomar made the catch and was back on his heels. The proper guy caught the ball, Joe Carter, because he was going toward home plate. There's Dykstra tagging. He sees Alomar back up, but Joe Carter properly calls Roberto off the play and makes the throw home to hold Dykstra.
Dykstra at third with one out. No score in the bottom of the first. And the batter is John Kruk. He's 7 for 17. Despite the 32 hits combined by the two teams last night, Kruk went 0 for 5. Kruk foul tipped the high 91-mile-per-hour fastball from Guzman. Juan turns 27 years old next week. He's 5'11", 195 pounds, from the Dominican Republic. On the ground to second and will get the run in. Alomar throws out Kruk. Dykstra scores and the Phillies lead 1-0. That's the 4th RBI of the World Series for John Kruk.
And the 9th RBI of the postseason for Kruk, and 7 of those RBIs were go-ahead RBIs, and this puts the Phillies in front. The last guy to do that, Gene Tennis, back in 1972 when he played with Oakland, and now he is the bench coach for Cito Gaston and the Blue Jays.
There's Gene. And Guzman's first pitch to Dave Hollins is a ball high. Phillies had scored a run without a hit in the bottom of the first. Last night in the first, they scored 4 runs with 1 hit. Hollins even in the count at 1-1. He had 2 hits and walked twice last night, scored 3 times, flied to center, ending the ball game against Dwayne Ward. Strike. Tim McClellan, the home plate umpire, tends to hesitate before coming up with the strike call. Two and 2. Should Hollins reach, Darren Daulton would bat next. And that ends the inning. First strikeout of the night for Guzman, but the Phillies take the lead after 1. It's 1-0.
Finally, there's a TV that proves
they scored an unearned run in the bottom of the first, and they lead 1-0 as the Blue Jays bat in the second against Curt Schilling with John Olerud to lead off. He's played in 3 of the first 4 games and has gone 3 for 10. Strike 1 over the inner third. Olerud, Molitor, and Fernandez. Batters 5, 6, and 7 coming up. That's a pretty impressive 5, 6, and 7.
I'll say
2 top hitters in the league, and then Fernandez, who's driven in 9 runs in 4 games.
Olerud, not only the top hitter in the American League, the top hitter against right-handed pitching. 396 against right-handers. Roberto Alomar was second with a 359 average. What a group to get through if you're a pitcher.
1-2 on Olerud. Certainly as a pitcher, you can't be under much more pressure than Schilling is tonight, pitching to keep his team's season alive.
A lot of people say the Phillies have to win 3 in a row. I think the way the players view it is that they have to have 3 one-game winning streaks.
As Jim Gray mentioned, the mood in their clubhouse was upbeat despite the crushing defeat of last night. Still 2-2 on Olerud. To left and dropping fast, Milt Thompson makes the running catch. Before the World Series started, we spoke with Curt Schilling about pitching under pressure.
If you apply it in a positive way, it's a good thing. You know, I thought there was pressure to win. I mean, that's a good pressure, though. I mean, that's the pressure you live to be in. There's negative pressure, and to me, that's self-inflicted. I mean, if you think there's any kind of negative pressure on you, then you're going about your job the wrong way. I mean, the pressure to win is the pressure that we play the game for.
Very well said. Schilling has not yet allowed a hit. Paul Molitor is the batter. He's now 8 for 15 with that scoring change. Has to be considered a leading contender for MVP honors in this series, but the Toronto offense has been so well spread out. Should they win it tonight, it would be tough, at least at this moment, to choose an MVP or even who the leading candidate is. Here's a look back at the 8th inning of last night's game. A play that involved the scoring change. Hollins couldn't get a glove on it. Originally that was scored an error, but it was changed to a double for Molitor and an RBI. Schilling behind in the count 3-1. We're in the second, and the Phillies lead 1-0. To right and well hit. Eisenreich just in front of the track makes the catch. The last 4 outs recorded by Curt Schilling have come on fly balls.
And none of the fly balls have been pulled. White flied to center, Carter flied to center, Olerud the other way to left, and Molitor the other way to right. What does that mean? It means that Curt Schilling's throwing hard. So far, the Blue Jays haven't been able to get around on him.
Tony Fernandez leads the World Series with 9 runs driven in. Tony had 5 of those last night. He had 3 singles and also picked up an RBI with a ground out. Pulled foul into the seats. Another sellout crowd of better than 62,000 on hand at Veterans Stadium. And they are also at Sky Dome tonight. Sky Dome management opened the building and allowed the good people of Toronto to come in and watch the ball game, and as you can see, there are thousands there. Fernandez strikes out, and it's a 1-2-3 inning for Schilling. That's his first strikeout of the ball game after an inning and a half. 1-0 Philadelphia.
Game cards ready, and stay tuned for the Budweiser World Series Classic Play at the end of the 5th inning. You could win $100,000.
Of course, getting a foul ball as a fan is always a big thrill when you come out to the ballpark. With the World Series, it's even more of a thrill, and as a result, some fans are willing to go up and over to grab a World Series souvenir. Even shook hands. I'd like to see that in the city of brotherly love.
Speaking of World Series souvenirs, we have one dangling in front of us.
I
got a
noticed
fisherman above us.
There's somebody who really wants your autograph. A program dangling down from the upper deck as Darren Daulton bats.
Rather innovative.
One and two the count on Daulton. He leads off against Juan Guzman. 1-0 Philadelphia in the second inning of Game 5 of the World Series. Guzman will face Daulton, Eisenreich, and Thompson in the second. Well hit toward the gap in left center. Henderson on the run, and it's off the wall and a hop. And Darren Daulton has a leadoff double. That's the first hit for Philadelphia.
When Darren Daulton is hitting well, this is what he does so well, and that's keep in the front shoulder. That's why he hit the ball hard to left center field. Instead of trying to pull the ball, you end up hitting the ball off the end of the bat. This ball was really scorched to left center, a double for Daulton to lead off the second.
And Jim Eisenreich will try to move him to third. He squared to bunt and took a fastball low for ball one. It was 96 miles per hour on the gun downstairs. Eisenreich is tied with Milt Thompson for the Phillies club lead in runs driven in this World Series with 6. Even though Jim has only hit 235, he's gone 4 for 17. He swings away this time, bounced it down to first. Olerud stepped on the bag for the out. Daulton the third on the play. Let's get a scouting report on Juan Guzman from his battery mate, Pat Borders.
He can get away with just a fastball a lot of times because of the movement of his fastball. He doesn't even know which way it's moving. A lot of times he releases a little different every pitch. The ball may cut, the ball may sink. Sometimes he comes out like maybe a BP fastball out of his arm. He didn't quite get his arm through or something, so it's a different speed altogether, and he's not trying. So it's just a natural thing for him. That's good to have a Guzman when he has his control plus his slider and changeup. It makes it real easy to call a game.
But as Tim noted earlier, it can be very difficult to be the catcher in a situation like this with as many wild pitches as Guzman throws. Daulton is at third. Thompson the batter. 2-0 the count.
Guzman had a wild pitch in game one that allowed Mariano Duncan to score, as a matter of fact. Defense is in for Toronto.
Thompson had a huge night last night. A single, a double, a triple. He drove in 5 runs. Two balls and a strike. Juan Guzman wears number 66. A couple of years ago in winter ball, he was given the number 66. Had a great winter. So he asked for number 66 when he went to spring training with the Blue Jays, and that coincided with his rise to prominence as one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. Popped up. Hernandez a long way to go out. Henderson a long way in to make the basket catch. Daulton played it halfway down the line, so he's back to third with 2 outs.
So Thompson fails to drive Daulton home. Henderson, playing perhaps too deep with his speed, was able to come in and make the catch. With a guy like Rickey Henderson, he can play 3 or 4 steps deeper than most guys because of his ability to track down anything in front of him.
Of course, Rickey has been hitting much better lately, and he credits it to a lady named Betty who works at the Sky Dome Hotel. So Betty gave him a lotion and he applied to his hands, and his hands aren't as sore the last couple of days.
Potion lotion. Little surprised they're pitching to Stocker here. You know, you can't pitch around a guy with a guy on third base because of Guzman's wildness. If you're going to pitch to him, you got to pitch to him and try to get him out and not work the corners, because Guzman doesn't have that type of control to work around a hitter like Stocker.
And of course, this is a decision that Cito Gaston never has to make in the American League. Stocker does not have an RBI in the World Series, largely a result of the poor numbers that you saw with runners on base. He has an RBI now on a smash past Olerud. Daulton is in. Stocker will have at least 2 as the ball hit the stands where they jut out in right. It's a double and a 2-0 Philadelphia lead.
The Stocker that the Blue Jays have seen doesn't have an RBI in the World Series until now. But I mean, here's a .324 hitter during the season. You can't lose sight of that. And in my opinion, as we said before he got the double, you got to put him on and pitch to Curt Schilling. There's a tally out there on third.
Schilling, a swing and a miss. Phillies lead 2-0. They've scored a run in each of the first 2 innings. Schilling had 147 during the regular season. He went 11 for 75. He tried to check his swing. It was too late, says Dana DeMuth. 0-2.
Did Schilling go too far? Oh, yeah, easily.
And Schilling strikes out. They pitched to Stocker and he made it hurt. After 2 innings, 2-0 Philadelphia.
Introducing one of the series is brought to you by Budweiser Beechwood Aged for a crisp, clean, classic taste. Toyota and their full line of quality cars and trucks. Cellular One, clear across America. And by Bayer Aspirin, the wonder drug that works wonders.
Man can work a room, can he?
He sure can. Dave Raymond, the Phillies fanatic, son of longtime University of Delaware football coach Tubby Raymond. Pat Borders starts the third with a base hit. It was trapped by Eisenreich, who made a terrific play to get it on the hop. But Pat Borders has his 4th hit of the World Series.
Nice try by Eisenreich. He doesn't catch it in the air, but he does short hop the ball and keep Borders to a single. Nice play.
And you saw that outfield turf is still very wet. It rained until about a half hour before game time. Neither team took batting practice. Here's Juan Guzman. In his first major league at bat, an obvious bunt situation. Cito Gaston said of all of his pitchers, Guzman seemed to be the least comfortable as a hitter. His bunt fielded by Kruk. That's 1. That's 2. 3-6-4 double play.
John Kruk racing toward home, realizing he has a slow runner behind him in Pat Borders, who's not going to take advantage of Kruk leaving too early. And an easy double play. And that's the one thing that Cito Gaston told us before Game 3 here at Veterans Stadium, the first game here. He said, you know, at times he would just prefer that his pitchers strike out to stay out of the double play. Well, here in trying to bunt, he bunts into a double play.
2 outs and the base is now empty in the Toronto third. The Phillies lead 2-0. Top of the order, and Rickey Henderson, who started the ball game with a ground ball to second. Curt Schilling has his fastball fouled out of play to the right. Schilling was stunned during the National League Championship Series when he went to a Philadelphia Flyers game across the street and was given a standing ovation. The first hockey game he had ever attended. Thought he'd sneak in and catch the game, didn't realize he'd be spotted by the crowd. And it was a heartfelt standing ovation from the Flyer fans. We're off to a pretty good start, but I'm not sure anybody in this city is aware of it. Out of play and right. It's one of the byproducts of the Phillies sharing this stadium with the Philadelphia Eagles of the NFL is that Jim Fregosi, their manager, and the Eagles coach Rich Kotite have become very good friends. 1-2 on Henderson. Dykstra. That ends the inning. We'll return to Veterans Stadium after this message and a word from your local station. Phillies lead 2-0 as we head to the bottom of the third. Top of the order coming up for the Phils. Lenny Dykstra leads off against Juan Guzman. And the first pitch is popped foul and out of play behind the Toronto dugout. Dykstra started the Philadelphia first with a walk. He stole second and took third when Borders' throw sailed into center field for an error and scored an unearned run. Charge to Guzman on a ground out by John Kruk. Guzman gave up an earned run last inning on a pair of doubles by Dalton and Stocker. Oh, 2. And Dykstra, as is so often the case, takes a stroll around the batter's box. He does that after just about every pitch. And there's been so much talk during this World Series about solutions to speed up the game. One of them might be to require the hitters to hang around the batter's box a bit more often.
Develop new habits. That's really all it is. It's a habit.
They used to call Mike Hargrove when he played. He's now the Indians manager, of course, the human rain delay. And Jim Fregosi says just about everybody in baseball now is the human rain delay. Two and 2. Juan Guzman came to the Blue Jays back in 1987 in what looked to be a very minor deal at the time. He came over from the Los Angeles Dodgers for infielder Mike Sharperson, who was just a utility player at that time for Toronto and had been up and down between the Blue Jays and their minor league clubs. But Guzman has developed into one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. Strange movement on that pitch.
That's what he did a lot with the Dodgers, and the Dodgers gave up on him. They thought he was the type of pitcher that certainly had a good arm, but he was too wild. Scout Al Lamacchia saw him pitch in a B game at Vero Beach, where the Dodgers train, and said, here's a guy worth taking a chance on. And he's the guy who suggested him to Pat Gillick.
We talked last night about the great Blue Jay organization from top to bottom, and Al Lamacchia is another guy who deserves a lot of credit for the great work he does in scouting. He did the Blue Jays advanced scouting, followed Philadelphia around to get Toronto ready for the World Series. 3-2 is a fly ball in shallow right center and caught by White. Nice running catch by the Gold Glove center fielder for the first out of the inning. If you're just tuning in, the Phillies took the lead in the first. An unearned run scored by Dykstra as he walked, stole second, took third on an error, and scored on a ground out by Kruk. And the Phillies scored again in the second. Kevin Stocker doubled with 2 outs to drive in Darren Dalton, who had started the inning with a double. Mariano Duncan is the hitter with 1 out in the third. Down to third. Molitor continues to play very well in the field. He has not had a miscue in 3 games now in the field. 1 game at first base and 2 at third.
Talked to Jim Fregosi before the game, and he said, hey, I'm unfazed by what happened last night. We played a lot of games like that. Sean, you and I were talking before the game, but not a lot of games that were the 4th game of the World Series.
They certainly did play in their fair share of slugfest during the regular season. They were able to bounce back from losing their share of them. You mentioned the circumstances a lot different in the World Series. John Kruk has a hit. After an 0 for 5 last night and after grounding out his first time up tonight, Kruk has his 8th hit of the World Series, and he's aboard with 2 outs.
Hits this one hard up the middle. Alomar playing Kruk to pull on the ground. They play John shifted around toward left field in the outfield. So John Kruk with a 2-out single.
And that brings up Dave Hollins, who struck out swinging to end the first. Guzman has finished each of the first 2 innings with a strikeout.
Phillies underdogs to the Atlanta Braves. They beat them in 6. They're underdogs coming into the Blue Jays. And they're trailing 3 games to 1 and have to win 3 in a row. They have been written off more than a 3-martini lunch.
One and one on Hollins.
Jim Fregosi, however, still confident. Loves these guys. They give you 9 innings every day of hard baseball.
Line to right, and it falls for a hit. Kruk stops at second as Carter fires it back in. So the Phillies are trying to put something together with 2 outs here in the third. Dave Hollins has his first hit of the night.
High fastball, and Hollins gets around on it. Where pitchers try to pitch Dave is up and in, but he handles this fastball from Guzman and rifles one to right.
Kruk at second. Hollins at first for Darren Daulton, who doubled on one hop off the fence in left center and scored last inning. 4 hits now for the Phillies, and ball 1 up and away from Guzman. And Cito Gaston is on his way to the mound.
Most pitchers have to hit spots working the ball in and out. With a guy like Juan Guzman, you just tell him, throw the ball down the middle of the plate. Let your natural action take care of things. Don't try to be too fine. The corners are the spots for most pitchers, but for Guzman, it's the plate.
We mentioned that the Blue Jays are trying to become the first team since the Yankees in '77 and '78 to win consecutive world titles. When they did it, they had a different manager each year. Billy Martin the first year, Bob Lemon the second. So Cito Gaston would be the first manager to win consecutive world titles since Sparky Anderson did it with the Reds in '75 and '76. 2-0. The count on Daulton. And it seems that Cito Gaston is just now getting the respect that he deserves, despite his phenomenal winning percentage since he became the Blue Jay skipper in 1989. The 2-0 pitch. Pop foul, and it drifts out of play.
Talking to Cito before the game, and he said he really doesn't care whether the fans respect him, the press respect him, but he is happy because he feels like the players respect him. And he said, and as honest as he could be, that he means it as long as he has the players' respect, and he certainly does that.
A pop-up very high in the direction of Alomar and Olerud. Alomar puts it away, and the Phillies strand 2 in the third. After 3, 2-0 Philadelphia.
Summary is sponsored by AT&T.
The Phillies scored an unearned run in the first and an earned run in the second on an RBI double by Kevin Stockard. They desperately need a big performance from Curt Schilling, and he has provided them with 3 scoreless innings of 1-hit pitching. Facing Devon White, who sends it just over our heads. Devon flied to center in the first. He has 7 hits in the World Series. 6 of them have gone for extra bases. The World Series record for most extra base hits in one series is 7. Vaughn needs 1 to tie Willie Stargell, who had 7 for the Pirates in '79. That was the year in which Pittsburgh overcame a 3-1 deficit in the World Series. And that's what the Phillies are trying to do against Toronto. White, Alomar, and Carter coming up against Schilling in the 4th. 2-0 Phillies. White strikes out in a bad pitch.
We have talked so much in this series about the defensive abilities of Roberto Alomar. He can go to his left, as he did in Game 1. He can go to his right, as he did in Game 1, to save a run. He can jump and throw the ball at the same time. And he can hurdle. Remarkable athlete.
And he can hit a little bit too. 444 in the World Series. He was the 3rd leading hitter in the American League during the regular season. And it's interesting to hear discussion about Roberto Alomar as a potential Hall of Famer. He's only 25 years old. But already there is speculation about whether or not he'll make the trip to Cooperstown. If he continues on this pace, he's a lock.
How about the deal the Padres from San Diego made it 3 years ago? Fred McGriff and Tony Fernandez going to San Diego for Roberto Alomar and Joe Carter. And now the Blue Jays have both Alomar and Carter, who have starred for them over the last 3 years. Tony Fernandez is back with them, and Fred McGriff's in Atlanta.
The 2-2. Well hit, base hit. The single to right for Roberto Alomar. That's the first ball pulled by a Toronto hitter tonight off Curt Schilling.
Looked like a splitter, and Schilling got it up a bit, and Alomar told Dalton, "I'll handle this one." And he did.
You don't see trades like the one you were talking about much anymore. The big blockbusters. So much of the maneuvering is hampered by contracts nowadays. Many trades really based on a swap of salaries as much as anything else.
Certainly in San Diego's case, that has been the case over the last year and a half.
Well, they are swapping players who have salaries for players who really don't have one. Tony Fernandez back with the Blue Jays. And to think at one time they used to call Toronto general manager Pat Gillick Stand Pat because he didn't make any moves.
Anything but that the last 2 years.
12 new faces on this World Series roster from the Blue Jay club that won it all a year ago. No balls and 2 strikes on Joe Carter, who was out on a fly ball to center his first time up. Cito Gaston says despite all the new faces, this is the best bunch of guys, use his words, that he has had in his stint as Toronto manager. Just outside, 1-2 on Carter.
A good 0-2 pitch by Curt Schilling, trying to get Joe Carter to fish at the ball off the plate. But Joe says fish aren't biting.
But he is directing. Bob Fishman, our director tonight. Bob Dickus, our producer. Happy to have you with us for Game 5 of the World Series. 2-2 on Carter. Alomar at first with 1 out. 2-0 Phillies in the 4th. Good move by Schilling. And that had Alomar lunging back to first.
Schilling gave up 11 stolen bases this year. However, 11 were caught stealing. And this shot shows Alomar getting just in under the tag of John Kruk. You can see how the first base position is made for a left-handed thrower. The glove on the right hand, all the pitcher has to do is throw the ball to the glove. Much easier to make the tag than with a right-handed throwing first baseman.
Slashed out of play. Still 2-2 on Carter. Nick Leyva, the third base coach, he took over at mid-season when Rich Hacker, who's been the Toronto third base coach the past couple of years, was seriously injured in a car accident. Leyva had been managing the Blue Jays AAA club in Syracuse, New York. And it's wonderful to see Rich Hacker back in uniform. He is with the Blue Jays here in the postseason after missing the second half of the regular season. The 2-2 is popped out of play.
And that's the ideal place that right-handed pitchers try to pitch Joe Carter in tight. He's a good low ball hitter, but more than that, he likes to extend his arms. But you can't just stay there. Like all good hitters, you have to move the ball around. But you hope you can set up Carter to where he'd be vulnerable for that fastball inside. But he fought that one off. Count remains 2-2.
Check swing, no swing, says Dana DeMuth.
Now the pitch was very close to being a strike, but a little outside, and Carter did hold up, it appeared. See, the hands come across, but the barrel of the bat does not come across the plate.
Runs on a 3-2 pitch. It's strike 3 and a double play. After 3.5 of the bet, 2-0 Philadelphia.
Obstacles Darren Daulton has to cope with. First the bat, now the body, and a nice throw to Mariano Duncan to nail Roberto Alomar. Nice on both ends. First Daulton, and secondly Duncan.
So it is still 2-0 Phillies as they bat in the fourth against Juan Guzman. Jim Eisenreich up there with a count of 2-0. He bounced to first in the second. Juan Guzman to face Eisenreich, Thompson, and Stocker here in the fourth. Alomar throws him out. Soggy turf and very worn here at the vet. They're talking about replacing it within the next couple of years. The Phillies management would like to see a new turf surface by 1995 in this municipally owned stadium. The All-Star game is going to be played here in 1996. Guzman missed with ball one high to Milt Thompson, who flied to left in the second. The 2-0 is just low, and Thompson is in the driver's seat. 3 balls and no strikes. Ball 4. The Phillies have had at least one base runner in every inning. That's the second walk issued by Guzman. A runner at first with 1 out in the fourth. 2-0 Philadelphia. The Phillies have out hit the Blue Jays 4-2. Toronto has made the game's only error, and it led to an unearned run in the first. Guzman will work next to Kevin Stocker. Blue Jays elected to pitch to Stocker in the second, with Dalton at third and 2 outs, and with the pitcher on deck. Stocker made them pay when he doubled down the right field line. Thompson was not running on the first pitch to the shortstop.
He wasn't running then on the pitch out either. You have to think that Guzman would be a very tough pitcher on which to hit and run, because he throws a lot of high fastballs. The ideal hit and run pitcher is a pitcher who is always around the plate and who throws ground balls. Try to open up a hole, get a middle infielder covering, and then shoot it through the hole, vacated by the infielder who's covering.
You saw Gene Tennis flashing signs. He will occasionally call for pitch outs. Thompson is not running, and Stocker looked at a fastball high. So Guzman has missed the strike zone with each of his last 6 pitches. Borderline pitch, 2-1. The count on Stocker.
Stocker thought it was inside and maybe a little low, but it appeared to be in the strike zone. Yep, on the corner. With the left-handed batter up, Tony Fernandez will give the sign to Roberto Alomar. If he opens his mouth and the runner runs, that means Alomar is covering. You have it. If his mouth is closed, then he has it. So shortstop covering here.
Thompson does not run, and Stocker looked at ball 4. So Guzman has walked 2 in a row. That's a good reason not to run with Guzman's periodic control trouble. He gave Thompson the free ride down to second base as he put Stocker on at first.
That's a good point. Also an illustration of what Jim Fregosi thinks. He says that young hitters, if he sends the runner with the count 3 balls and a strike, the batter is more apt to be swinging at the ball just off the plate. It may be a ball, and he wants his hitters to be patient. Therefore, he rarely will send the runner at first with a count 2 balls and no strikes to a hitter, or 3 balls and 1 strike.
Somewhere in the crowd tonight is Jim Fregosi's daughter, Jennifer, who was a senior at the University of South Florida, and Jim's a little worried about her academic progress this semester because she's missed an awful lot of class time to attend these postseason games. Kurt Schilling squared the bunt and left the bat out there long enough to get a called strike. 89 on the high fastball. 1 strike on Schilling, who struck out swinging against Guzman in the second. Juan is only fan 2 to this point. We're in the 4th, and the Phillies lead 2-0. And they have first and second with 1 out. Schilling squares again, and he fouled it at the plate, 0-2.
Bat's in foul territory. If the bat's in foul territory and you bunt the ball, more often than not, you'll bunt it foul. That's why hitters are encouraged, once they square around, to push the bat out into fair territory.
Interesting on that shot of Jim Fregosi that he did not have his lucky Phillies jacket on. That he wore through much of the season. it's a good one. Borders has to go to first. It's a sacrifice. 2 for the scoring. Borders to the second baseman, Alomar. And now there are 2 men in scoring position with 2 outs.
Well, this is a blueprint by Curt Schilling on the slider. You could see the spin on the slider. Look how he deadens it. So Borders has to feel it instead of the on-charging John Olerud.
And the fans are on their feet as Lenny Dykstra steps to the plate, but they're going to intentionally walk him. And Cito Gaston talked before the game tonight about how impressed he has been in this series by Lenny Dykstra. And certainly it would be difficult not to be impressed with the way he has played. But they'll put Dykstra on the 3rd walk of the inning and get back to a right-handed hitter with Duncan coming up next.
Cito Gaston saying that Dykstra reminds him of some of his hitters. Obviously, any manager would love to have Lenny Dykstra.
You do roll the dice, do you not, though, Tim, a little bit in this situation with Guzman's control trouble. Now you force him to throw strikes with the bases loaded and Duncan coming up.
But with Dykstra being as hot as he has been, you almost have to walk him right there and hope that Guzman can throw strikes, especially with the right-hander coming up.
Duncan 0 for 2 tonight. Still 9 for 22 in the series, a 4.09 average. Tonight he's flied to right and bounced to third. Good breaking ball. A swing and a miss by Duncan, who, despite the control troubles of Guzman in the inning, went up there hacking at the first pitch. Thompson, the runner at third. Stocker at second. And Dykstra at first. All 3 reached via the walk. Duncan might have chased 2 pitches off the plate here, and he's in the hole 0-2.
I think he did. Both sliders. So if he chased those, there's no need to set him up. Just continue going out there. Because if you come inside with a fastball, you may make a mistake with it. Look for something away from Guzman.
Up and away that time. 1-2 on Duncan. Guzman has been a consistent winner as a major leaguer. His lifetime record in regular season play in the majors is 40 wins and only 11 losses. The 1-2 pitch. He struck him out with the slider to end the inning. The Phillies have stranded 6 after 4. They lead 2-0. The Yankees wound up winning that series in 7. John Olerud is the hitter, facing Curt Schilling. 1-1 the count. Of course, the irony of that was that in Game 2 of the '56 World Series, Don Larsen was the losing pitcher. And that was one of the 2 World Series games in which the team overcame a 5-run deficit to win, prior to the Blue Jays doing it last night. Game 2 of the '56 World Series. Larsen was the losing pitcher, blew a 6-run lead, 6-0. Olerud, high fly down the right field line and deep. Eisenreich in the deep corner makes the catch. With his back up against the fence just in front of the 330 mark.
When a pitcher doesn't put it on the corner of the plate, usually the hitter hits it to the corner of the field. And Olerud just missing a home run off Curt Schilling.
Paul Molitor flied to right his first time up. Duncan bobbled it and threw it away. Dalton in perfect position, backing up the play to prevent it from going in the dugout, and he saved Base advancement by Molitor, who would have been at second. Instead, he's at first on an error by Duncan.
The big league error right here. Duncan back on his heels, that in-between hop ate him up, and now he makes the pivot and tries to throw. And look at Dalton. He's right there to prevent the ball from going into the dugout. Positioned perfectly.
That's Duncan's first error of the World Series. Each team has made an error tonight. And the tying run is at the plate. Tony Fernandez, the batter. We're in the fifth. The Phillies lead 2-0. Fernandez struck out his first time up. He has already set a World Series record for runs batted in by a shortstop with 9.
The record for runs batted in the World Series, Bobby Richardson with 12 RBIs in the 1960 World Series. The Yankees losing to Pittsburgh in 7. Famous Bill Mazeroski home run over the head of Yogi Berra off Ralph Terry to win it.
Line to left, well hit. Thompson backing up to make the catch. And Molitor went most of the way to second. Retreats to first with 2 outs. The RBI record in the World Series for a shortstop had been 7 by Bucky Dent in 1978, prior to Fernandez collecting 9 in this World Series.
Yeah, that's after Bucky Dent hit the famous 3-run homer at Fenway to beat the Red Sox.
What home run?
What home run?
We New Englanders have eliminated that.
Off Mike Torres. You're in denial, right?
Yes, indeed. It never happened. We have blocked it from our memory banks. That was indeed the same year. Borders the batter. He singled to right in the third. Schilling quick move to first, and Kruk had to reach for the throw. Molitor can run at age 37. He had 22 stolen bases during the regular season, was only thrown out 4 times.
Thrown to the left of Kruk.
Slicing out of play and right. The ball and a strike on Borders.
I think if you run in a situation like this, you have to be more sure than that you can make second base. You're down by 2, the bottom part of the order up. If Borders gets a hit, that clears the pitcher. If he doesn't get a hit, at least it clears a right-handed batter against Schilling.
In the air in left center, Dykstra going back and waving off Thompson. On the warning track, he makes the catch. A couple of deep fly balls for outs for the Blue Jays in the 5th. Halfway through the ball game, Philadelphia 2, Toronto 0. 94-foot long Bud 1 airship with camera operator George Schaafsma aboard is using a tie-in-the-sky camera to bring you the scenic shots from 1,000 feet above the vet tonight. And it's nice that the weather is cleared up. John Kruk, the batter. He bounced to second but drove in a run in the first. He brought Dykstra in from third, and he singled to center off Guzman in the third. Guzman has only given up 4 hits. He trails 2-0, 1 of the runs unearned. Bottom of the 5th, first pitch, a ball low. Kruk had a chance in this postseason to play against his former minor league roommate Ozzie Guillen. Now with the White Sox in the World Series, had Chicago defeated Toronto in the ALCS. Kruk and Guillen would have been reunited. They roomed together for 3 years in the minors in the San Diego organization. Of course, Guillen spoke very little English when he came.
Signed as a 16-year-old, as a matter of fact.
Ozzie says John Kruk taught him how to speak English and how to drink beer. But Ozzie said that John Kruk was also wonderful in taking Guillen and his wife under his wing, helped them find an apartment. They went on road trips. Kruk would give his television set to Guillen's wife so she could watch it. count is 2-2. Hollins on deck, and then Dalton. Big swing and a miss for strike 3 in the first out of the 5th inning. In game 1, it was Roberto Alomar's defense that propelled Toronto to victory. Jim Eisenreich had a big 3-run homer in game 2 to cap a 5-run third that propelled Philadelphia to a 6-4 win. Then it was the 10-run uprising for Toronto in game 3. Paul Molitor keyed the attack. And last night was indeed one for the record books. 15-14 Toronto. Highest scoring game and longest game in World Series history. And the Blue Jays lead 3-1 as they play game 5. Halfway through, the Phillies lead 2-0. Trying to keep the series alive and send it back to Toronto for game 6 and 7 if necessary. Hollins to right. Carter the catch, 2 outs. Hollins now 1 for 3.
The last time the Phillies scored 14 runs and lost a game was back on August 3rd, 1969, and then they did it on consecutive days. How weird is that? They lost 16-15 to Pittsburgh, and then the next day they lost 19-15 to the Cubs. Matter of fact, the highest scoring game in history involved the Phillies. The Cubs and the Phillies scored 49 runs back in 1922. The game 26-23.
In favor of the Cubs. Darren Dalton doubled and scored in the 2nd, popped the 2nd in the 3rd.
Phillies also involved in that 23-22 game against the Chicago Cubs at Wrigley Field in 1979. That was won by the Phillies.
High fly to right. Carter drifting back onto the warning track to make the catch. And the Phillies go in order for the first time tonight. We've played 5, and Philadelphia has a 2-0 lead.
No.
Series champions in both leagues. Sparky's record. Write it down. You could win $100,000 from Budweiser.
Sean McDonough with Tim McCarver, Jim Gray, and Pat O'Brien at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. Game 5 of the World Series. And the Phillies, needing a win to stay alive, lead 2-0 as Toronto bats in the 6th. Juan Guzman bunted into a 3-6-4 double play in the 3rd. Schilling will face Guzman, then the top of the order, Henderson and White. And Cito Gaston said that Juan Guzman appeared to be the least comfortable at the plate. Many of his pitchers, and I understand why with that track record, only 1 hit in the minors.
Would you see him look back on the strike call, however? He looked back questioning home plate umpire Tim McClellan.
Probably said, just remember that kind of pitch when I'm out there throwing. The swing seemed to be an afterthought. And Guzman strikes out. Wonderful moment between innings. Nick Leyba, former Phillies manager, welcomed back by the Philly Fanatic to the strains of Anything for You by Gloria Estefan. And that was Joe Carter, who was a huge Philly Fanatic fan. That has him in plenty of company. That's a majority opinion of anybody who's ever seen the Fanatic. And a nice touch by Nick Leyba as well. Nick Leyba told a great story about, a touching story about the day he was fired by the Phillies early in his 3rd year as Philadelphia manager. Said he got the news and went to his son Casey's school so that Casey wouldn't hear it from somebody else. Picked Casey up at school. Casey, 8 years old. He said, "I've been let go." Casey said, "You mean you've been fired, right?" As usual, the youngster has a way of getting right to the heart of the matter. 2-1 on Henderson.
Leyva still lives in the Philadelphia area. As a matter of fact, one of his golfing buddies in the wintertime, Lenny Dykstra, the Phillies.
Leyva was one of the first to call and congratulate General Manager Lee Thomas of the Phillies when Philadelphia clinched the National League East this year. And Lee Thomas, of course, was the man to let Leyva go.
Henderson complains about this pitch. That ball's a strike.
2-2 on Rickey. Pulled foul past Nick Leyva. Curt Schilling pitched a shutout against the Dodgers back in April. And after the game, Don Drysdale sought him out, tell him how much he admired the way he pitched aggressively, just as Drysdale did during his playing days. Schilling had some rough outings just before the All-Star break. He went 0-5 prior to the break, cost him a trip to the All-Star game in Baltimore. And he spent a lot of time during the break thinking about Don Drysdale, who died tragically on July 2nd. The 3-2 to Henderson is fought off on a West Coast trip after the All-Star break. Schilling talked to Johnny Padres, the Phillies pitching coach, one-time teammate of Drysdale, who talked for a long time with story after story about the way Drysdale pitched. Schilling returned home. He put a poster of Don Drysdale up in his locker, and he lost only one game the rest of the regular season. Still 3-2 on Henderson. What a wonderful man to emulate. Don Drysdale.
Yeah, if I were a right-handed pitcher, I would want his poster up in my locker too. The winder.
You want to be the kind of pitcher he was and the kind of man that he was. Ball 4, up and away. So Henderson is aboard. It's only the second walk thrown by Schilling. The first since the first inning when he walked Alomar with 2 outs. Schilling has done a terrific job shutting down this record-setting Toronto attack through the first 4 games. The Jays had scored 37 runs in 35 innings. Tonight, Schilling has shut them out through 5 1/3. Henderson has 1 stolen base in the World Series. He's been thrown out once. Devon White, the tying run at the plate. He took a fastball for strike 1. Two 2-0 Philadelphia in the top of the 6th. And a loose ball came onto the field out near second base. Apparently thrown out of the outfield stands. Was retrieved by Mariano Duncan, who rolled it into the dugout. Very short lead by Henderson, and a nasty pitch by Schilling. Outside part of the plate, around the knees. 0-2 on Devon White.
This is in a perfect area to Devon White. Right there.
In the dirt and blocked by Dalton. Keeping Henderson at first.
I don't think Darren realized he had the ball. A fine play by Dalton. Watch him turn the glove over and smother the ball. I think he thought he was going to drop it, but the ball kind of rolled back in his glove.
The 1-2 is low. After all of the scoring last night, the Blue Jays have not had a runner reach second base tonight. Last pitch that was low to White clocked at 93 miles per hour. The 2-2. Fouled off the leg of Dalton.
That is the third foul tip that Dalton has gotten tonight. Pat Borders banged up himself, blocking that splitter from Juan Guzman. And I think Darren is out to talk to Curt Schilling because his knee hurts right now.
If games 6 and 7 are necessary, they'd be played at Sky Dome in Toronto. First pitch Saturday for game 6 would be 8:12. And on Sunday, it would be 8:29. You mentioned Jim Fregosi might have a change in his pitching plans. If Terry Mulholland is used in relief tonight, then Danny Jackson would be moved up to start game 6 if game 6 is necessary, and Mulholland would start game 7 if that ball game is necessary. Just missed, and the count is full.
Saw the 0-1 pitch catch the corner. This just misses the corner.
Henderson might be off with the 3-2 pitch. He is not, and White took ball 4. Dalton wanted an appeal. So far, they haven't gone down to Paul Runge. Now they checked with him, and he says no swing. Well, after walking only 1 through the first 5 innings, Schilling has walked the speedsters Henderson and White back to back. The tying run at first, and the go-ahead run coming to the plate in the person of Roberto Alomar. And that has the crowd at Sky Dome wild with anticipation of what might be here in the 6th inning for the Blue Jays. Admission was free at Sky Dome tonight. They did ask for a charitable donation from those who went to the ballpark to watch the game on the Jumbotron in center field. Bounce to second, a double play ball if they hurry. Stalker turned it. 4-6-3, and that ends the inning. We'll return to Veterans Stadium after this message and a word from your local station.
I'm Jim Gray. The Phillies lead 2-0. I'm joined by Tony La Russa, who won the 1989 World Series with the Oakland A's and is the current manager. Do the Phillies have the type of team who can come back and win 3 games from the Blue Jays?
They probably have the perfect attitude for this because they're 1 game and out, and they're real competitive. They enjoy that role. So if any team can pull back from 3 and 1 down, it's the Phillies.
Next year, 3 divisions realignment. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't mind next year playoffs, but I hate the thought of baseball letting in a second-place team to October. You know, we've always said you got to win, you got to finish first in whatever your league or division to get to the postseason. I hate to see us change that.
Tony, thanks for joining us. Good luck next year with the A's. Let's go back upstairs to Sean and Tim.
And an interesting part of realignment next year is that the Phillies undoubtedly will not be the preseason favorites to win their division. They'll be in the East, but Atlanta joins the East, and you'd have to think with the wagon they have coming back that Atlanta will be favored.
So do the Montreal Expos join the Eastern Division of the National League, and those fine young players that the Expos have challenged the Phillies for the division title this year but fell short.
Juan Guzman got Eisenreich to start the inning on a line drive to left. That's a line drive to right, handled by Carter. Milt Thompson is out number 2 in the 6th. And Guzman has retired 6 in a row. He hasn't allowed a hit since the 3rd. We're in the 6th, and the Phillies lead 2-0. They've out hit the Blue Jays 4-2. First 4 games, the highest scoring in World Series history. Game 5 has been a pitcher's duel between Guzman and Schilling. Kevin Stocker working on a perfect night. He tried to bunt and fouled it off. He ripped a double down the first base line to drive in a run in the second. He walked in the fourth. There's Danny Jackson, who might start Game 6, might start Game 7, might not start again this year if the Blue Jays win tonight.
If Curt Schilling can pitch a complete game, it's 2 for the price of 1. He allows Mulholland to start Game 6 and Jackson to start Game 7.
Check swing. They appeal. Strike 3, says Paul Runge. That ends the inning. 1-2-3 go the Phils. And we go to the 7th. 2-0 Philadelphia.
Sports coverage of Game 5 of the 1993 World Series is brought to you by the new Chevy S-Series line of trucks. McDonald's, what you want is what you get at McDonald's today. Michelin, because so much is riding on your tires. And by American Airlines, something special in the air.
A look at Philadelphia, the 4th largest population center in the United States. Veterans Stadium in South Philly. That's the Spectrum on the left of your screen, the home of the Flyers and the 76ers. Here at the Vet, the 7th inning rolls around. Curt Schilling working on a 2-hit shutout through 6. He is performing extraordinarily well under incredible pressure again in the postseason. Two and 0 the count on the leadoff hitter Joe Carter. John Olerud is on deck. And then Paul Molitor. 2-1. Carter has flied to center and struck out. Down to third. Hollins had to back up. Long throw. Got him.
Hollins can afford to back up on plays like that and make the long throw because he has a strong throwing arm. The artificial surface requires a stronger throwing arm than natural grass. Third baseman can play more shallow on grass, and the grass slows down the ball. That's why they can play more shallow, but the ball gets to you in a hurry on the rug. And third basemen who are forced to play deep must have a strong arm, and Hollins does.
Now John Olerud. Some of you might have been wondering during the postseason why John Olerud wears a batting helmet when he's in the field. That goes back to January 11th of 1989, a day that John's dad, John Olerud Sr., who's a dermatologist, describes as the scariest day of his life. John Olerud had a seizure that day. His dad flew out to Washington State to accompany John Jr. to the hospital. John's dad thought he was going to die. He underwent 6 hours of surgery for an aneurysm at the base of his brain. And it wasn't all that long after that he was in the major leagues with the Toronto Blue Jays. At the suggestion of his dad, as a result of that brain aneurysm, he wears the batting helmet while he is in the field. Dr. Olerud himself was a fine baseball player, an All-American catcher at Washington State. Played several years in the minors. As a matter of fact, he said, I played in every league except the American and National. Foul tipped into the mitt, strike 3. 2 outs in the 7th. 5 strikeouts tonight for Curt Schilling.
You don't get Olerud to commit himself too quickly that often, but he just gets a piece of it on the check swing, and Dalton hangs on. 5 strikeouts for Schilling. Blue Jays have only been shut out once this year. That was on June 30th by Fernando Valenzuela.
They've been shut out through 6 2/3 by Schilling tonight. And the first pitch to Molitor was a strike. Chopped down the line, foul, and it's quickly 0-2 on Molitor, who is 0 for 2 tonight. Stirring in the Jays bullpen, and Danny Cox begins warming up. Chopped over the mound, charged by Stocker, and he couldn't play it. And Molitor, big turnaround first, but he'll hold there, not taking any chances with his team down 2-0 in the 7th inning. That should be scored a hit. I don't think if Stocker came up with it, then he would have had a play.
Stocker tried to make the quick transfer. That's his only play. Bob Baylor, the first base coach, followed Molitor down the line past first base to remind him to make the turn, because all Molitor is thinking is to beat the play. But Molitor made the turn and wisely decided to stay at first base. Paul Molitor making the turn, and right to his right was Bob Baylor, who had a terrific career with the Toronto Blue Jays. As a matter of fact, he had .310 in 1977, and prior to this year, for an expansion team, that was the highest average ever. But Andres Galarraga led the National League in hitting this year. Galarraga with the Colorado Rockies.
Bob Baylor, one of the original Blue Jays. And many believe he'll be a fine major league manager someday. Tony Fernandez struck out and lined to left. He represents the tying run at the plate. 2-0 Philadelphia in the 7th. Molitor at first with 2 outs. Fernandez to center. Dykstra makes the catch. Fernandez is now 0 for 3. 7th inning stretch at the bat. 2-0 Phillies. Just missed. A little bit low and away. 2-2 on Dykstra. Mariano Duncan is on deck. The hit by Schilling, just the 5th given up by Guzman. He's pitched very well. He had retired 7 in a row before the leadoff single by Schilling. One of the 2 runs scored by Philadelphia is unearned. And a good change of speeds that had Dykstra nodding his head as he struck out for the first out of the inning.
Speaking of strikeouts, that's what Mariano Duncan did. His last at bat with the bases loaded and 2 outs. We'll take you through that trip. Slider away, a slider farther away. That was fouled off. A high slider misses, and then the finishing touch to Duncan. So slider, 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 slider. And we'll see if Guzman continues that pattern.
That strikeout ended the 4th inning when the Phillies had loaded the bases on 3 walks by Guzman, who hasn't thrown a walk since. Schilling at first, 1 out, home half of the 7th. The Phillies lead 2-0. The Blue Jays lead the World Series 3-1. The 1-0. Big rip by Duncan. And it's possible that this is his last game in a Phillies uniform. If they happen to lose tonight, the Phillies front office would have a decision to make. Mariano Duncan, if the club picks up his contract option for next year, will make $2.2 million, or they can buy him out for $500,000. They have to let him know within 5 days of the end of the World Series.
I think that's a no-brainer. I think you sign Duncan, you pay him $2.2. He's a bargain at that. He had a terrific year. First year in his career that he hit more against right-handers than against left-handers. So he's proven that he's an everyday player this year. He prefers second base. And I think the Phillies will pick up the option to Duncan's contract. $2.2 million bargain.
Well, he did platoon most of the year at second base with Mickey Morandini.
Of course, he played a lot of shortstop, too. 49 games at shortstop. Phillies couldn't fill that plug until they got Kevin Stocker from the minors. Juan Bell played there. Mariano Duncan played there. Kim Batiste played some shortstop. They found the right guy when Kevin Stocker came up, and then they moved Duncan back to second.
Duncan hits the deck on the high fastball, clocked at 90 miles per hour.
This ball up and in to Duncan. High, hard one. We'll see if he goes away now with the slider.
He does, and it's bounced up the middle. Fernandez steps on the bag. Double play. On to the 8th at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia. The Phillies 2 and the Blue Jays nothing.
Team summary is sponsored by Priority Mail.
The Phillies scored single runs in the first 2 innings. An unearned run in the first. Lenny Dykstra started the inning with a walk, stole second. Borders throw to second, went into center field. Dykstra took third and scored on a ground out by Kruk. Then 2 doubles by Dalton and Stocker led to a run in the second. Meanwhile, Curt Schilling has shut out the Blue Jays on 3 hits through 7. And it is likely the end of the night for Juan Guzman, as he was scheduled to bat second here in the top of the 8th, and Rob Butler is in the on-deck circle to pinch hit. Schilling looking in at Pat Borders, who has one of the 3 Toronto hits, a single in the 3rd. Game 7 starting pitcher is warming up for Toronto. Dave Stewart would start Game 6 if necessary. One and 2 now on Borders. Base hit. And the Blue Jays will bring the tying run to the plate with nobody out in the 8th inning. Borders is 2 for 3. And they cheer at Skydome as Willie Cañete comes on as a pinch runner for Borders. And Rob Butler steps up to pinch hit. There's Cañete.
Not only are they cheering at Skydome, they're cheering in Vancouver tonight also. I got a phone call about 20 minutes before the game from a fella who said that 200 buses are leaving tonight after the game, whether the Blue Jays win or lose, and they are making the trek cross country to Toronto. 200 buses, a big blue caravan, they're calling it. It's a lot of folks, 200 buses.
Rob Butler, who appeared as a pinch hitter last night, with a swing and a miss for strike one. He became the first native Canadian to appear in a World Series game since Reggie Cleveland back in 1975 when he pitched for the Red Sox. Butler appeared in only 17 games during the regular season with Toronto. He was one of 6 players used in left field by the Blue Jays and missed some time due to an injured left hand. He was on the DL from June 23rd until September 1st. If you're thinking about a game-tying home run, it's not very likely. Butler only hit 1 home run in 55 games this season at AAA Syracuse. He did not have a home run in his 17 games with the Jays. A ball and 2 strikes on Butler. And he fought it off to stay alive at 1-2. Nobody out. Cañate, the pinch runner at first. In the top of the 8th, the Phillies lead 2-0. Popped up. It will be close. Hollins to the rail, and it's 2 or 3 rows deep.
Sometimes you can tell how a batter holds the bat, how to pitch him. The one thing that Schilling doesn't want to do with a hitter like Butler is throw off-speed pitches to him, overpower him. You try to overpower the smaller guys, especially when you're 6'3", 215, and still throwing in the upper 80s. Butler just trying to make contact right here with the count 1-2.
He reached on a fielder's choice and scored last night at his only at bat, and there's a base hit. Cañate streaking toward third, and he'll get there as the throw is cut off. And the Toronto Blue Jays have the tying run at first base with nobody out in the 8th inning.
Just go ahead and smile, Rob. He wanted to. He wanted to break out in laughter as he gets around on this inside fastball and rolls it through the infield. Cañate, good base running, going to third on this ball. Eisenreich's throw is cut off, and the Blue Jays with a threat here in the 8th inning. And remember, it was the 8th inning of last night's game when Toronto, trailing 14-9, scored 6 times to win it 15-14.
So they're hoping for another crazy 8th. No action in the bullpen. Rob Butler, the first native of the city of Toronto to play for the Blue Jays, with a huge hit off the bench here in the 8th. And now Rickey Henderson, 0 for 2 with a walk his last time up. Rickey says since he went to the lotion given to him by Betty, and that's all that he knew her as, Betty from the Sky Dome Hotel, his hand has felt better, his right hand. He said a tip from Cito Gaston helped him generate more bat speed. Cito said if your right hand hurts, pull the bat through the strike zone a bit more fervently with your left hand. And Rickey has been able to generate more bat speed the last couple of days that way.
That's the thing you got to love about Pat Borders. He's out of the game, still has his shin guards on. The pinch ran for him. He went back, turned his cap around, put his shin guards back on.
Well, there might be a very physical celebration in the Blue Jay dugout if Henderson gets a hit. Schilling might be tiring. He's down in the mid-80s now on our gun down below. That pitch was 86. Earlier he was in the low to mid-90s. And still no action in the Philadelphia bullpen. Schilling has thrown 118 pitches. Is 2-1 to Henderson. Is fouled back to the backstop. Devon White is on deck.
I think what Jim Fregosi is saying, that unless the Blue Jays take the lead, Kurt, it's up to you. It's all yours.
Runners at first and third. Cañate, the runner at third, is just the second Blue Jay to reach scoring position. He's the first Toronto runner to get to third. The 2-2 to Henderson. He fought it off. Games 3 and 4. The last 2 games in this series. The Blue Jays combined to go 14 for 30 with runners in scoring position. They're only 0 for 1 tonight. Another 2-2. Popped up and drifting into the crowd. It was a warm and humid day in Philadelphia. It got up into the low 70s. In the last few minutes it is noticeably cooler and the breeze has picked up. The flags indicate that it's blowing out toward right. Another 2-2. Off the glove of Schilling. He'll try the plate. Cañate in the rundown. Dalton. Now Hollins applies the tag. Cañate is out, and Butler did not move to third. So it's first and second for Toronto, and now 1 out in the 8th inning.
Well, you're not going to find a rookie as aggressive as an older player. Butler's going to be a safety first base runner, and really Dalton gives him no chance. The play off the glove of Schilling, the throw to Dalton, and watch how Dalton runs Cañate back to third. That's what catchers are trained to do. That freezes Butler at second base. Hollins runs him down, and he gets to him quickly and prevents Butler from coming over to third base. Nice play by Schilling. Fortunately for the Phillies, the ball lands right behind him, and then Dalton running him back hard. You could see Dalton looking at the runner at second base when he came out of the chute. Unusually executed by the Phillies, because you want to get him running back toward third, the base from which he came, instead of toward home. But they got the job done.
Tying run at first, go-ahead run at the plate, and interesting that in what is now almost a closing situation, that it's not Mitch Williams but Terry Mulholland who is warming up. Devon White 0 for 2 with a walk his last time up. Takes strike 1 right down the middle. Coming into tonight's game, Lenny Dykstra and Devon White were the only players on these 2 teams who had hit safely in all 10 of their teams' games in this postseason. Dykstra does not have a hit tonight, nor does White. Strike 2. Most of the fans are on their feet. The 0-2 pitch. And White fought it off. He had the game-winning triple to drive in the final 2 runs of the 6-run 8th inning last night.
I can imagine that Jim Fregosi had a mental grimace when Schilling threw that 0-2 fastball in the strike zone.
Schilling appeared to reach back for something on it. That one was 94. And that's dribbled foul down to Bob Baylor in the first base coach's box.
Jim Fregosi telling us before the World Series started that pitchers get too anxious to get hitters out. What's the hurry, says Jim. If it's 0-2, you have 4 shots at him. Why throw a strike? Make him reach.
The 0-2. He struck him out.
Looked like a slider off the plate. And White bites.
And Schilling, who has shown tremendous grit and determination throughout the postseason, is trying to gut his way through the 8th inning. As the pitches pile up, 1st and 2nd and 2 outs. Alomar looked at ball 1 low. Butler, the runner at 2nd. Henderson at 1st. 2-0 Philadelphia in the 8th inning. Alomar walked in the 1st, singled in the 4th, bounced into a 4-6-3 double play in the 6th. One of 3 double plays turned by the Phillies tonight. A ball and a strike on Alomar.
Schilling continues to hit the spots.
Nobody out. Schilling 1 strike away from getting out of it. And his fastball missed outside. 2-2. Out of play, still 2-2. Should Alomar reach, Joe Carter would bat next. Schilling has thrown 132 pitches tonight.
Twice as many strikes as balls.
And he has thrown 26 pitches here in the 8th.
No, but he's still throwing the ball hard. I think that's what Fregosi and Johnny Podres are looking at right now. I think Mulholland's warming up for Olerud in case he hits this inning.
Another 2-2. Slapped into foul territory in left. And Alomar is checking to see if he broke the bet. Out of play again.
The dangerous thing to consider for the Philadelphia Phillies that the tying run is Rickey Henderson at first base. 2 strikes, 2 outs. The runner runs with the crack of the bat. So on a short double, long single, Henderson could score, and I'm sure that the outfielders are thinking about Rickey Henderson right now.
Another 2-2. And another foul ball in left. The Phillies lead 2-0. Curt Schilling is working on a 5-hit shutout in Game 5 of the World Series. We're in the 8th inning. The Blue Jays have 2 men on with 2 outs. The tying run at first. The go-ahead run at the plate. The next pitch will be the 30th of the 8th inning for Schilling. On the ground to second. Duncan throws him out. The Blue Jays leave 2 men on. They've stranded 6. We go to the bottom of the 8th. 2-0 Philadelphia. This copyrighted telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the expressed written consent of Major League Baseball. Curt Schilling has had a terrific postseason, and he never pitched under more pressure in a game than he is under tonight. He has shut out the Blue Jays through 8 on 136 pitches. 5 hits allowed by Schilling. He has struck out 6. He's walked 3. No Phillies pitcher has ever thrown a complete game shutout in postseason play. And the new pitcher for Toronto as we go to the bottom of the 8th is Danny Cox. He's making his 2nd appearance in this World Series. And the new catcher is Randy Knorr. Cañete ran for Pat Borders. It's an all-new battery. Knorr behind the plate, Cox on the mound, and John Kruk the batter with a count of 1-0. And a big swing and a miss. 1 for 3 is Kruk. He picked up an RBI with a ground out in the 1st and singled in the 3rd. Cox pitched in Game 3, the first game played here at the Vet. He pitched 2 innings and allowed 3 hits and a run. He walked 2 and struck out 2. He's a former Philly. 1-2 the count on Kruk.
It's amazing how the game can take you from the wild excitement of last night's game, 29 runs scored, to the calm fantasy ride cruise of tonight's game. 27 runs fewer than last night.
And you got varying opinions about how to term last night's game. Some said it wasn't a great game because it was so poorly pitched and was sloppy in spots. Some said it was one of the greatest games in World Series history. I think this is a game that every fan can appreciate tonight. It's been well played for the most part and certainly very well pitched. Cox with a leadoff walk to Kruk. Guzman pitched the first 7. He allowed 2 runs, only 1 of them earned on 5 hits. He walked 4. 1 of those was an intentional walk. And Guzman struck out 6, including Dave Hollins once. Hollins 1 for 3, a single to right in the 3rd. Ball 1 up and away. The Phillies trying to build on a 2-0 lead in the 8th. Toronto has the middle 3rd of its order coming up in the 9th. Joe Carter, John Olerud, and Paul Molitor. The count on Hollins.
When pitchers are behind in the count, they're inclined to throw the fastball away from the hitter. When they're ahead in the count, that's when they jam them.
Three and 0. Cox in danger of walking the first two men in the 8th inning.
Guy like Dave Hollins, pitchers try to pitch him inside, but once he gets ahead in the count, that's what he looks for. He zeroes in that little imaginary box and looks for the ball in it and tries to buggy whip it. Be interesting to see if he is swinging here.
He was not, and he took a strike. Three balls and one strike on Hollins. Darren Daulton is on deck. Cox, a 34-year-old veteran, to the plate with ball 4. It scoots by Knorr. Nearly went into the Philadelphia dugout. Kruk around second before putting the brakes on. And he's still hobbling. So that's back-to-back walks to open the 8th by Danny Cox.
Ball gets away from Randy Knorr, but with John Kruk running, really no damage done to the Blue Jays. You could see Randy Knorr going after that ball the wrong way. Usually a ball in the dirt, a catcher tries to block with his body. You forget about catching it with your glove. But Kruk had to stop at second base as Galen Cisco is now out to talk to Danny Cox and Randy Knorr. Mark Eichhorn is warming up, and if you're thinking double play, Darren Daulton hit into only 2 double plays this year in 136 double play situations.
And if you're thinking about a sacrifice bunt, he didn't lay one down all year. He hasn't had one since 1991. In fact, his last sacrifice bunt on April 27th of 91. Jim Fregosi said all along that he would continue to manage in the postseason as he did in the regular season, do all the things that got his team to this point. He's stayed true to his word for the most part. One for 3 tonight is Darren Daulton. He doubled to left center and scored in the second inning. That was the last run scored in this ball game.
I think the only way that Jim would get away from that thinking is in a save situation. I think tonight he goes to Mulholland and not to Mitch Williams.
Borderline strike to the knees. Daulton surprised by the call. Sometimes, as we said, it's a late surprise when Tim McClellan is the home plate umpire because he waits till he comes up out of his stance before giving the call.
You could see Darren asking Tim, wasn't too low, wasn't the ball low?
1-2 now. If you're wondering, the bullpen phones are working tonight. Any reason to believe it was the bullpen pitchers who broke the phones last night, didn't want to answer the call and come into that slugfest. Cito Gaston told us the walkie-talkies the teams were issued didn't work either.
Hey, in a game where the phones were broken last night, there were a few guys dialing long distance. They were punching 8 on their bats.
Cito appreciated that the umpires allowed him to send Eichhorn back to the bullpen, bring Castillo in. Eichhorn ran in as a result of the miscommunication. The bullpen phone wasn't working. And he also said that Jim Fregosi was a very good sport for not protesting. He understood the situation. It's Dr. Phil Marone, the Phillies team doctor, in the background. With 2-2 to Daulton. He struck him out. On a pitch low and out of the strike zone. That's the first out of the inning. 2 walks to start the inning by Cox, and then a big strikeout of Daulton.
Looked like a split finger fastball that really went down, and Daulton goes for it, swinging over the top.
Jim Eisenreich 0 for 3 tonight. He lined to left his last time up. And despite his .200 average, he has driven in 6 runs in this series, tying him with Milt Thompson for the team high.
3 of those with 1 swing in Toronto in Game 2.
Neither team has excelled with runners in scoring position tonight. The biggest reason why it's only 2-0 Philadelphia in the bottom of the 8th. Cox missed low. It gets away from Knorr. The runners don't try to move up.
We've talked about John Kruk and the sore knees and sore lower back. So you do not have a lot of speed down at second base. Nothing Curt Schilling would like more than another run or 2.
Amazing that Schilling has looked so poised in the postseason when he's been on the mound, because when we've seen him in the dugout, it is obvious that it has been an agonizing experience for him.
Dugouts do that to you. It's like the waiting room.
Good breaking ball by Cox. 1-2. Cox's pitch for St. Louis, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Toronto. He was part of the Pirates team that lost to Atlanta in the National League Championship Series last year. Eisenreich, that is strike 3. He can't run with first base occupied. So back-to-back strikeouts for Cox after the 2 walks in a row to open the inning.
That was the same pitch on which he got Darren Daulton, that splitter in the dirt. And Eisenreich commits. Nice play by Knorr to prevent the ball from getting by him.
Now Milt Thompson, who sends one into the crowd behind home plate. He's 0 for 2 with a walk. The runner at second is John Kruk. At first, Dave Hollins. 2 outs, 8th inning, 2-0 Phillies. 2 runs on 5 hits and 1 error for Philadelphia. No runs, 5 hits, and 1 error for Toronto. A ball and a strike. Cox has battled back numerous arm troubles to pitch in the World Series. He was on the disabled list in '86, '87, '88, the entire '89 season. On the DL again in 1990 and 1991. Henderson in a foul ground, and it's in the first 2 rows in left. Tuned in late, you missed all the scoring in the ball game to this point. In the first, Lenny Dykstra scored an unearned run. He walked, stole second, took third on an error by Pat Borders, scored on a ground out by John Kruk. Then in the second, Darren Daulton led off with a double, moved up to third on a ground out, and scored on a double by Kevin Stocker. And that's all the scoring. 2-0 Phils. 1-2 on Thompson. Time called by Tim McClellan. To the mound. Cox kept looking back at John Kruk. This was Danny's first year in the American League, and it was a highly successful season, particularly early in the year when some of the other members of the bullpen were faltering. Cox was a pleasant surprise and took on a much more prominent role. He struck him out. So after walking the first 2 men in the inning, Cox strikes out the side. We go to the ninth. Last call for the Blue Jays. Carter, Olerud, and Molitor coming up. Anheuser-Busch's Aerial Ambassador, the Bud 1 airship, is filled with more than 235,000 cubic feet of helium. The Bud 1 is piloted by Captains Mike Hansen and Russ Adams with help from Crew Chief Jay Harris. We appreciate their efforts tonight. First pitch of the ninth inning, a ball by Curt Schilling, and now ball 2 to Joe Carter. Kim Batiste has come in to replace Dave Hollins at third. And in this postseason, when he has come in, the ball has managed to find him. Carter with the count 1-1, pardon me. The first pitch was a strike, fouled it back to the screen, and now it's 1-2. John Olerud is on deck, and then Paul Molitor. There is no action in the bullpen as the ninth inning begins. The 1-2 to Carter. Fly ball, shallow right. Duncan out. Eisenreich in. Duncan makes the catch. A long way out into right field. And Carter is 0 for 4.
You can see Duncan smiling there because he got into his back pedal a little too quickly. He thought he was backpedaling prematurely, and then he finally turned to his left and caught it rather easily.
Now Olerud 0 for 3 tonight. He swung at the first pitch and sliced it off to the left. The Phillies lead 2-0. To short. Stalker throws him out. And the Phillies are 1 out away from sending this series back to Toronto for Game 6. Blue Jays have only been shut out once in their history in the postseason by Danny Jackson, then with Kansas City in Game 5 of the '85 American League Championship Series. Paul Molitor trying to keep Toronto alive in this one. He's 1 for 3, an infield hit his last time up.
Blue Jays have also won 7 straight road games in postseason play. That includes the 2 games at Atlanta last year and also includes the clincher, Game 6 in Atlanta.
Molitor taking all the way. 2-0, and it's 2-1. Schilling trying to put the finishing touches on the first ever complete game shutout by a Phillies pitcher in postseason play. Line to center. Dykstra is there, and the Phillies win. A brilliant 5-hit shutout for Curt Schilling. Pitches, a 5-hitter for Schilling. We're back right after this.
Oldsmobile. AT&T, we help put your world within reach. Goodyear, #1 in tires. And by the Prudential, plan for retirement. Call Prudential Insurance now.
The Toronto Blue Jays now lead the World Series 3-2 following tonight's 2-0 victory for Philadelphia in only 2 hours and 53 minutes, the shortest game of the series to date. The Chevrolet player of the game will give you one guess. That's right, Curt Schilling. A 5-hit shutout. Chevrolet will donate $1,000 in his name to the Special Olympics. What a gutsy performer he has been in the postseason. And here's Jim Gray.
Well, you're exactly right about that, Sean. Curt, how was it that you were able to shut out a team that scored 15 runs last night?
Defense. Defense. We played a great, solid game in the field today. The fans were outstanding. You know, getting up on their feet every time we needed a big out, and we made the plays when we had to make them tonight.
You were just telling me, and I can't believe it, but you're going to be available to pitch again this weekend?
I'll be able to throw relief on Sunday, hopefully. You know, Game 7 is for all the marbles.
All right, Kurt, congratulations to you.
Thanks.
Terrific performance, Sean.
Indeed it was, and as you could tell, the crowd here at Veterans Stadium was hearing that interview over the PA system. We'll have more in just a moment. Philadelphia, let's rejoin Jim Gray.
All right, we're with Jim Fregosi, the Phillies manager. Jim, how were you able to manage to get this team back in order after what happened last night?
Well, you know, we played a lot of games like last night's game. This club is a tough club. They go about it in a professional manner. And as Darren Dalton said earlier today, he says he wants to go to Toronto tomorrow to work out. He says it's the only time he's ever wanted to work out in his life.
Tell us about your pitching rotation for this weekend.
Well, I got Mulholland up, but it's his time to throw. Mulholland will pitch on Saturday, and Danny Jackson will pitch on Sunday.
Good luck, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Let's go back upstairs to Sean and Timmy.
And interesting to hear both Curt Schilling and Jim Fregosi talk about Game 7 as if it is a foregone conclusion. We'll have more in just a moment.
How can IBM help you these days?
Dave's guests are Bob Newhart, the musical group Guru, and Chloe Dysecker, a 5-year-old snake expert, plus one or two other surprises. That's tonight on Late Show with David Letterman. Now for Tim McCarver, Pat O'Brien, and Jim Gray, Sean McDonough saying so long from Veterans Stadium. The final score, Philadelphia 2 and Toronto 0. You've been watching CBS Sports coverage of the 1993 World Series. Good night from Philadelphia.
Keep the ball rolling.